When a black woman was denied a room at a luxury hotel, the manager could not have imagined that he was dealing with the owner of the entire chain. That day marked the beginning of the end for his career and a turning point for everyone involved. What happened next shocked even the most seasoned observers. But let's start from the beginning. Joyce Wilson, a woman with perfect posture and a confident gaze, approaches the front desk of the luxurious Golden Sunset Hotel. Her sharp business suit and expensive briefcase make her stand out amidst the hustle and bustle of the lobby. She has just returned from an intense business trip and is preparing for her keynote speech at a major conference the following day. At the reception, she is greeted by Thomas Reed, a middle-aged manager whose eyes narrow slightly upon seeing Joyce. Casting a brief glance at her dark skin, he asks with thinly veiled tension, "How can I help you?" "I need a room, preferably a suite if available," Joyce replies calmly, handing over her passport. Thomas quickly checks the system, then looks back at her, his expression now colder. "I'm sorry, but unfortunately, we're fully booked." Joyce looks skeptically at the display behind him, where a glowing sign clearly reads, "Rooms available." Pointing to it, she says, "Really? It says here that rooms are available." "That's a system error," Thomas responds curtly, adjusting his tie nervously. At that moment, a line begins to form behind Joyce, and customers start murmuring amongst themselves. One of them, a man in a suit, steps up to the desk, interrupting their conversation. "Do you have a suite available? It's our wedding anniversary today." "Of course, Mr. Harper," Thomas replies with a smile, promptly handing over the keys. Joyce raises an eyebrow, her voice firm. "You just said there were no rooms. Why, then, did this customer receive keys to a suite?" Thomas falters, but quickly comes up with an excuse. "That room was reserved in advance." "Just like mine," Joyce states firmly, showing him her booking confirmation on her phone. For a moment, Thomas is silent, then averts his gaze and speaks with clear unease. "Perhaps you'd be more comfortable somewhere else. This is, after all, a high-end hotel." Like a bolt from the blue, his words freeze the entire lobby. Joyce remains composed, but her eyes flash with determination. She pulls out her phone, dials a number, and without raising her voice, says, "Hello, this is Joyce Wilson. Please inform your management that I am currently at the reception desk of the Golden Sunset and have encountered an unusual refusal. I would like this matter resolved immediately." The lobby fills with a tense silence. Thomas begins to realize the gravity of his mistake, but has yet to grasp just how serious it is. Escalation of the conflict. A few minutes later, the senior administrator, Karen Morris, hurries to the front desk. An energetic woman with a polished professional smile, her quick, decisive footsteps echo in the lobby. But as soon as Karen spots Joyce, her expression shifts to one of uncertainty. "Miss Wilson," she says apologetically, her tone carefully measured, "is there an issue?" Joyce calmly turns to Karen, sliding her phone back into her pocket. "I'd like to know why I was denied check-in despite having a confirmed reservation. Can I get an explanation?" Karen glances at Thomas, who avoids her gaze, his eyes fixed on the monitor in front of him. She instantly understands that the situation has spiraled out of control. "This must be a misunderstanding. I'll get to the bottom of it right away," Karen says hurriedly, but Joyce isn't about to let her sidestep the matter. "A misunderstanding? He claimed there were no rooms available and then handed keys to another guest. Could you clarify exactly what the misunderstanding was?" People in the lobby, including other guests and hotel staff, are now watching the scene intently. Some begin whispering among themselves, while a few guests discreetly take out their phones to record the incident. Karen tries to diffuse the tension. "Thomas, could you explain why a guest with a confirmed reservation was denied a room?" Thomas fumbles, visibly sweating under the weight of so many eyes on him. It was just a mistake. I thought her booking wasn't confirmed. Besides, we have certain policies regarding guests to uphold the standard." "What policies?" Joyce interjects, her tone now steely. "Are you implying that I don't meet your standard?" Karen forces a nervous smile, her voice trembling slightly. "Of course not. We take pride in welcoming all our guests. Ms. Wilson, I will resolve this immediately. It's too late for that, Joyce replies curtly. I'm waiting for the general manager, now. Karen realizes there's no escaping the inevitable. She sends one of the staff members to fetch the hotel's director, Emma Harris. Meanwhile, Joyce notices that some journalists, likely there to cover an event in the conference hall, have entered the lobby and are now paying attention to the situation. A perfect moment to test your customer service policy, Joyce says, her voice loud enough for everyone to hear. I'm sure the public would love to know about your standards. Karen's face pales. Just then, Emma Harris, a young woman in a sleek business suit, strides into the lobby. The moment she spots Joyce, she freezes, then rushes toward her, clearly alarmed. Ms. Wilson, what is going on here? All eyes turn to Thomas, who now understands there's no way to justify his actions any further. An unexpected turn. Emma Harris stops in front of Joyce, her expression a mix of apology and panic. Ms. Wilson, please allow me to resolve this immediately. I've only just learned about this misunderstanding, she says, nodding toward Thomas, who now looks as pale as a sheet. A misunderstanding? Joyce raises an eyebrow, her voice calm but icy. It seems your manager decided I wasn't worthy of your elite service. I'd like to know why. Emma turns sharply to Thomas, her tone hard as steel. Thomas, would you care to explain yourself? Ms. Wilson is not just an honored guest. She hesitates, realizing that revealing more could make the situation even worse. Thomas stammers as he begins to defend himself. I didn't know who she was. I thought it was a mistake. Joyce nods, her tone as composed and frigid as ever. So, you would treat any guest this way if they didn't meet your vision? Tell me, is this a company policy or your personal bias? Emma steps between them, her voice now urgent. Absolutely not. This is completely unacceptable. We will address this immediately. Thomas, I expect you in my office in 5 minutes. Thomas nods weakly, but stays rooted to the spot, seemingly paralyzed. You're fired, Joyce suddenly declares, her words like a thunderclap. I'm making that decision myself. A stunned silence falls over the lobby. Emma hesitates, unsure, while Joyce calmly pulls out her phone and opens her call app. Let me remind you, Joyce continues, now addressing Emma directly. I am not just a guest. I am the CEO of the corporation that owns this hotel. Emma's face drains of color, and her eyes betray pure panic. She immediately springs into action, desperate to contain the situation. Ms. Wilson, I assure you, this is absolutely unacceptable. We will conduct a full investigation, and I will personally oversee changes to our policies. I hope so, Joyce responds curtly. But first, I'd like to address your staff. I'm sure they're curious about the culture you're so proud of here. Journalists, already recording the unfolding events, start taking notes and filming Joyce's remarks. Thomas, visibly shaking, finally leaves, realizing his career is over. Emma nervously instructs the staff to gather in the conference room. With a commanding stride, Joyce heads toward the hall, the atmosphere heavy with the anticipation of change. The finale and a moral triumph. The staff meeting begins in the hotel's packed conference room. Joyce stands at the front, her posture and commanding gaze drawing everyone's attention. Journalists sit along the back wall, their cameras and notebooks ready to capture every moment. Many of you are probably wondering why I, the CEO of this hotel chain, have found myself at the center of such a scandal. Joyce begins, her voice firm and unwavering. The answer is simple. This was not just a misunderstanding. It was an example of systemic bias that millions of people face every day. The room falls silent. Thomas, standing near the door with his head bowed, looks utterly defeated. Emma shifts nervously on her feet beside Joyce. I started this business with the intention of creating a space where everyone would feel welcome, Joyce continues. Instead, I see fear and prejudice undermining that principle. Turning to Emma, she asks, what explanation can you give for people like Thomas holding managerial positions in your hotel? Emma swallows hard, but Joyce doesn't wait for a reply. That's a rhetorical question. The answer is clear. The problem runs deeper than one individual. It's a system we must change. She pauses, scanning the faces of the employees in the room. Each of you is the face of this hotel. But if you allow bias, discrimination, or injustice to walk through the doors, you will destroy everything we are trying to build. Today, we begin to make a change. I am launching a mandatory training program for every employee in this network to ensure that situations like this never happen again. The room buzzes with murmurs. Some employees nod in approval, while others look visibly uneasy. Joyce steps closer to the group. I believe each of you can be part of this change, but for those unwilling to uphold our principles of equality and respect, there is no place for you here. She sharply turns to Thomas. And that starts with you. I will not allow this behavior to persist. You're fired. Without a word, Thomas turns and walks out of the room, his departure met with heavy silence. Joyce addresses the staff once more. We are all capable of making mistakes, but the key is to learn from them. This hotel will become an example of how to confront challenges, change systems, and build a culture we can all be proud of. Her words are met with applause that gradually grows into a standing ovation. Journalists record every detail, while some employees raise their hands to ask questions about the forthcoming changes. Later, in her suite, Joyce watches a news report about the incident. She sees how the journalists highlight her decisiveness and principles. Her phone vibrates. Messages of support from colleagues and business partners flood in. Joyce smiles, knowing that today marked the beginning of meaningful change.